Hello people, welcome to my channel Code with Lewis. Today I'm doing a Flexbox tutorial and I'm calling it Flexbox Inception. The reason for this is because it's sort of the way that I've processed things, how I've learnt them. The initial way I learnt it was quite poor, and then after watching more tutorials and understanding it myself, I developed a different way of looking at things. When we're looking at sort of websites or pages you want to build in applications, we're going to compartmentalize things, and we're going to do it so that we have sort of columns within rows, within columns and rows and all that sort of stuff. They're all going to be intertwined, which is why it's called Inception, because there's layers of Flexbox within Flexbox. And I think it's really important to understand that to really get to grips with Flexbox. I'm going to go through some of the sort of basic features, you know, flex end, all that sort of justifying, aligning the items, all that sort of stuff. Stay tuned because it will be really good. If you don't know what Flexbox is, it's a tool that we use to help position our elements in an application or a website, and in my opinion is absolutely essential for you to be using because it makes everything so much easier. It's sort of automatically responsive as well, which is really important nowadays where we have mobiles, tablets, laptops, you know, large desktop screen, these massive sort of curved screens. So yeah, it's really important to use. I'm someone that really believes in Flexbox. I'm really passionate about Flexbox because I came from sort of floats and doing top and using pixels to organize my page. You definitely don't want to be doing that. You want to be using Flex or Grid, and Grid is an amazing tool as well, which I'll probably do a tutorial on in the future. Now the intro is done, let's get into the code. So before we actually start coding, let's actually show you what we're going to code. So sticking with the Inception theme, I've gone on IMDb and the sort of Inception page, and I found this sort of area here. There's action, adventure, sci-fi, across to the watch on Prime Video, down to the IMDb Pro section. I've just got a screenshot of this down here, and this is basically what we're going to code. So when we see the sort of things that we want to code, the website we want to build, or whatever it is, first things first, I think the most important thing to do is to put it in sections. So we're just going to create this sort of box on the outside. Of course, this would be sort of one major section of our website. And then the first things here, really super simple, just to split that right down the middle there. And what we can see from here is we've got these two sections, and of course these two sections are going to have a direction of a row, and this is set by the flex direction attribute. In these areas now we have all the elements are stacking on top of each other, and they are forming a sort of column. So that would obviously be flex direction column, and the other attributes in the flex direction category as well, which would be column reverse, so obviously flipping these the other way around, and row reverse, which would obviously flip the row the other way around. Other things we're going to cover will include the sort of justifying content, so where the content is going to be along the sort of axis that we've defined. So justify content, we'll go into this further and we'll show some real sort of visual examples to show you, but that will define how we are going across these axes that we've defined with flex direction. So for example, if we put the justify content for center, we would want to see our content sort of here. And if we put, say, flex start, we want it at the start of the arrow. Flex end, no real surprises, of course, at the end. And the same thing applies to the column. Additionally, we're going to have align items, another really important factor and attribute for Flex. And align items is going to be how we are in the axis perpendicular to flex direction. So if we set flex direction to a row like we have on the bottom here, align items is going to be along here. So if we set align items to flex start, our content's going to be up here. Flex center is going to be here. Flex end at the bottom, and there's also stretch as well, which is the default setting, which is going to cover the whole of that axis. And again, the same thing will happen when we go to column, but of course, instead of being in the vertical axis here, it will be in the horizontal axis here. So let's get into the code. Let's start fleshing out these two sections. Start looking at some of these attributes in action. So right now, all I've got is this sort of 500 pixel high section. Obviously similar sort of color to what we saw before. And that's just been established with some simple code, just attacking the main here, the main element, putting the width as 90%, and putting the height as obviously 500 pixels, background color, etc, etc. The setup for this is super easy. I'm not going to go over it. You know, putting the link as a style.css. Yeah, really easy stuff. So let's actually start coding out properly. So the first thing I want to do, as I said, we've got that left and right hand side. So we're going to have those two sections. We've got those two sections in there. We can see straight away the attributes that I was speaking about before. So we've got display flex, the flex direction as row, justify content as space between. I just want to show something quickly, which is some documentation I think is really useful in case you sort of forget something. And it's called CSS-tricks, and just put Flexbox in Google and you'll find it. And you can see what's sort of happening here. So as I was saying before, flex direction is going to set the direction of the main axis that you want to put the content in or the elements in. This flex wrap is something I'm probably not going to cover today, but maybe set to you as something to do for homework. All these have sort of shorthand versions as well, which can be really useful for reducing the amount of code you're writing. And justify contents. This is where we are here. So we can see space between. The big sort of difference between space between the rest of them is that there's no space on the edge, but the space between the elements, as is sort of suggested. So we're just going to flick back to that and then back to the code. So these two sections now, using the main selector, have been spread apart. But of course, because there's nothing in them, we can't see that. So let's actually put some things in them. So for now, I'm going to put a div in here. And that div is going to have 3 spans. And that is going to represent the sort of genres that we saw at the top of the page, which were action, adventure, and sci-fi. So let's get those in there. I'm just going to copy and paste them quickly. So we've got those 3 in there now. And let's give this a class, considering it is genres. Let's give it a class of genres. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? So we want these genres, class in our CSS, of course. And in this, we want our display to be flex. So that's the first setting we want to do to make sure that the parent container, this is a really important point by the way, the parent container and all the children of that parent container are the things that are affected when we do our, when we apply display flex. So the div, class genres, all the spans in here are going to be set by this display flex. And next thing we want to do is set the flex direction. As mentioned before, that's going to set the main axis of our elements. And of course, we want this to be horizontal rather than vertical. So we're going to want to put that into a row. And here we can see what justify content does visually. So we're going to put justify content flex start to begin with. And if we flick black, this is how we sort of want it to look. So we've got the content on the left hand side here. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an X in here. You can see here how the text is completely apart from each other, like we saw in space between. So let's have a little play with it. Let's see what happens when we put space around, space evenly and other things to really visually show what is happening. When we look at this to refer, if you're first starting out with Flex, I really recommend just having a look at this and seeing what is happening. After a bit, you will sort of remember them off by heart. You know, the wording is quite descriptive of what's happening. So we're going to change the main. So in space between, we're going to put space around, and let's see what happens now. So you can see we've got sort of an even bit of space between here, the middle, and the right hand side. This probably, so that's, if we split this directly in half, it would be sort of perfectly positioned. And you know, space between, got space around. What other ones we got? We got space evenly, which are kind of the same. So the 3 sections So the left, the center, and the right are all even. We've got genre sorted now. I just want to go maybe a step back. Maybe I should have done this first. And we're going to call our sections left and right. So let's go into our section here. Get a class of left. Of course, this is a bad naming convention. Don't do this in a real project, but just for ease of simplicity here, we're going to do it like this. So here, as we said before, the flex direction of these areas is in a column. So let's go into this. The first thing we want to do is display flex. So everything within these are going to be in a sort of column format, within a flex format. Then we're going to do the flex direction. And this is where we get the sort of column format. And justify content we're going to leave for now. There's no need to actually touch it. And also there's nothing actually going to change at this moment in time. So there's no point going back and checking the browser. So let's start adding more things in. So we want to go in here, and next part of the section we want to work on will be the paragraph. We're just going to call Law 25. Let's just make it easy for ourselves. And we can see that get added in there. It's probably reaching a bit on the right hand side. So I'm going to just set a min width on the right so that it does actually take up some space. And sort of represents what we want without sort of encroaching whilst we're doing the left hand side. So yeah, that's sorted now. So we've got that sort of look with the 66%, what we want to call it, done on the left, and the sort of 35% left over on the right. There's some padding to these as well, so of course they weren't touching the edges. There was some space in between. If we just go back to the screenshot, see there is a little bit of space on each of the edges. So I think it's important to capture that part of it as well. We've got the P tag in, and now the next sections are all divs. And if we go back to the shot here, the snapshot, we're going to delete these, and we can start to see the sort of inception that I was talking about now, because we get these sections here that are in a column. They clearly go down in a column fashion, but the sort of writing in here goes like this. What we're going to do is we're going to put them as two separate elements, and this one especially is a really important one because we have a similar effect happening here. So I think this would be a good point actually, if you want to just do this sort of element on your own, this one box here, because we have actually done the exact same thing before, but I'm not going to obviously say when. It's kind of obvious, but I'll let you do it. So yeah, let's get into these. So because they all had their own kind of style, I'm going to put them all in divs, and these are going to have, as I said before, I'm going to do it so the director, I believe, the director and the second part, and the writer and the second part, etc., will be in separate spans. So these were by Christopher Nolan. And these first two sections were very similar. So I'm just going to do that for that one. And the last one, I believe, was interesting. So go back on that. The stars. So I'm just going to copy and paste from the website. So we've got our sections now set up, but if you remember, we actually had that sort of arrow on the right hand side. So we're going to put a span in, an arrow, and for us to actually do this properly, we're going to need another div to wrap all of these other span tags in, because these two sections are actually going to be separate from each other. So let's push all that and indent that properly. Now we've got our sections. Let's get into some flex. We can see here that the the arrow, everything's falling in a sort of column fashion. And of course, we want this arrow to be over here somewhere. So that's one thing we want to do. The rest of it looks okay. We're going to add a bit of styling to this action adventure sci-fi just to make it a bit closer to the original. But let's get into that. So first things first, let's get into this div here. So we're going to want to call these similar things, I think. think kind of makes sense to give them the same class. So we're just going to call this a left container. As I said before, this naming isn't what I want to do. Please, when you do real projects, give it much more relevant names, let's say. So all these left containers, they're going to have the display of flex, the flex direction of row, of course, and justify content. For now, we're going to put flex start, and we'll see how that looks now on the website. So what happened here, because they're all flex start, we have the arrow sort of coming off right at the start, as we would expect. And just to have a little play with sort of the justifying here, if we go, you know, flex end, you're gonna have to guess where we're going. So if we have flex end here, we're all on the right hand side. Flex center, we will be in the center. The you know, space around and stuff like that won't apply to these two, but the stars one is what we want to apply that to. So let's add an extra into this. Just call it we're just going to call it between, because what we want to do is we want to put space between them. So we're just going to put dot between and justify. We're just using this sort of cascade of CSS here. So we're going to go space between, and when we go back to that, we need to you see what I've done there. We have the space between here, so we've got the stars on the left and the arrow on the right, and that's exactly what we wanted and exactly how it looks here. So let's get these back to where they should be. So of course these flex end should be flex start, and I think it would be cool now to actually add some sort of styling to the genre. So we're going to go genre span, which is obviously going to target the spans within the genre class, and then for that we're going to do padding 0.25 rem. I think we're going to need some margin as well. I'll just call that 0.25 rem as well. Actually, I'm going to change the padding to 0.5. Let's get the background color to a gray. Let's see what happens. Border radius 1 rem. That's maybe a bit too much. 0.5 rem. And we want the border to be 2 pixels solid black. Okay, let's see what we've got here. Oh yeah, that's not too bad. To be fair, 1 rem might have actually been right for that. So let's just go back and put 1 rem for the border radius. Go back to that. Maybe even bigger, but yeah, let's not spend too much time on that. The point is that we've got the sort of styling kind of similar to how we had it before. We've got the text on the left, we've got these set up nicely. Let's now add the small border that is on the bottom of all these areas. So I'm going to do something kind of tailwindy here, I think. I'm going to just put a class of B border for bottom border, because it's just something that I want to apply to all of these things. I don't have to go through basically do it individually. You could call it lazy, you could call it efficient, call it whatever you want. So we're going to go border, of course, bottom. We're going to go 2 pixels solid grey, and on all these items as well we're going to need some padding, because right now it's going to be right up close to the bottom of the text. So let's go on left container. We're going to need some padding on that. Let's just say 0.5 rem, 0, and have a look at what we've got. So yeah, not too bad. The paragraph clearly needs a bit of love as well. So we only have one paragraph class right now, so I'm just going to call paragraph element. So we're going to go Oh, sorry, getting ahead of myself there. Not just padding 0.5 rem, 0 again. I think it looks like there's some sort of margin that's been applied to it automatically. So I just want to see what happens when we change that. And there we go. That's looking a lot better. We could also go through and change these spans to blue. Not sure. I think that's a bit of a waste of time right now since we're focusing on flex. But we can't have this section done. Let's just add the IMDb Pro. Of course, this IMDb here is probably an image, and then on the right is maybe a paragraph or a span. Let's just add that in quickly just to finish the left hand side. Then we can move on to the right hand side. So here we are at the bottom. We're just going to do another div. It would be an image, but I'm just going to put span IMDb Pro, and then let's put another span in. Sorry, a paragraph. I'm just going to copy paste this in. Yeah, we've got that in now. We probably want to call this left container as well, actually. And that should be fine because, of course, we have the B border set separately, so the bottom won't have a border. Of course, we just get the same attributes from the left container, which will make it pretty much done, I believe. Oh, maybe not, maybe not. So here, there's something weird's got on here. I'm actually not quite sure. It might be a good example to use align items. So align items, as I mentioned, introducing this a bit earlier than I thought I would, but we're going to put center on this. As I said before, so align items, we've got the flex direction set as a row, so actually we're this way, and then we're going to get align items that sets the axis perpendicular to the direction we're currently setting. So because we've got this in a row, align items is the sort of vertical axis, and we're setting that as center, so everything should be aligned in the center. And of course, if we set flex start, it should be at the top, flex end at the end, and stretch as something that covers the whole distance if possible. So let's go back and have a look. Yeah, as expected, we have that set up really nicely. Definitely need some padding on the right hand side of this IMDb Pro, but really all finished. So I'm just going to do that quickly, and we will actually move on to the right hand side this time. We're going to put class of, we're just going to put pad right, because we just don't want to spend too much time doing this properly. It's, you know, I'm sure you're very capable at CSS, and you're not going to be doing classes like this whilst I whiz through a tutorial. So pad right, we're going to put padding right, of course, and let's just put 1 rem, and we're done. So let's do the right hand side.